When Pierre Charles L'Enfant gazed northward along the banks of the Potomac River in 1791, he envisioned a pedestal waiting for a monument. Well, since that day, Washington, D.C. has become a powerful symbol, not only for our nation, but for freedom and democracy. Its celebrated symbols of patriotism include the Vietnam Veterans Memorial, the Washington Monument, the Lincoln Memorial, and the Jefferson Memorial. Our nation's capital inspires millions of visitors every year. Hello, I'm Betty Hollister, Public Information Manager with the Regional Flood Control District, and welcome to a special on location in Washington, D.C. edition of the Flood Channel. On today's program, we'll hear from Nevada's congressional delegation, your voice in Washington, D.C. These individuals work together on Capitol Hill to address issues important to Nevada. Senators Reid and Ensign and Congresspersons Berkeley, Porter, and Heller tackle many problems that affect us back home, like flash flooding. They'll also show how they work together in Washington for the good of Nevada and its residents. After that, we'll talk with our partners from FEMA, EPA, and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers on a variety of topics like flood insurance, stormwater quality, and environmental concerns. Also, throughout today's program, we'll turn the show over to you, the residents of Nevada, so that you can ask questions of your Washington representatives in a segment called Your Voice. All that coming up on this special edition of the Flood Channel from our nation's capital. Welcome back to the Flood Channel on location from Washington, D.C. While you at home are enjoying our hot desert weather, it's also a time of year when intense heavy rain, damaging storms, and flash flooding are more likely to happen. With more than 6,000 new people moving to the valley every month and the ever-changing landscape of southern Nevada, many of you are unaware just how quickly damaging storms can cause flooding in the desert. The people who represent you in Washington, D.C. have seen firsthand just how damaging flash floods can be. They work together to secure federal funding for drainage improvements to protect families, homes, and businesses from damaging floodwater.
Well, I think Senator Ensign and I have developed a relationship in spite of our very close election in 1998 that's remarkable. That he, a Republican, I, a Democrat, are able to work together. And that leaves us the opportunity to do all the things we need to do for our respective parties, political parties, but yet work together on things that are important for the state of Nevada.
Well, we actually pride ourselves as a delegation on working well together. This is not to say that we agree on everything. Quite candidly, we don't. Obviously, we're Democrats and Republicans. We have different philosophies, different points of view, and our votes demonstrate that. But when it comes to issues that affect the state of Nevada and affect our constituents back home, we try to speak, and we're rather successful in speaking with one voice. A good way to do that is to work well together.
You know, politics can be pretty ugly. And if you turn on your television set and watch the news, unfortunately all you see is the rancor, partisan bickering that happens in Washington. And some of that is very accurate, but it isn't necessarily always the case. The Nevada congressional delegation, we don't agree on a lot of issues, but there's a lot that we do. And we thought the right thing to do is to start having breakfasts similar to the Senate. And I applaud Senator Reid, Senator Ensign, for years have been having a weekly breakfast.
And this doesn't occur anywhere else. When I tell my colleagues from California, hey, we have these breakfasts every week, you know, they ponder that because they can't even do that with their own side of the aisle, let alone their whole delegation.
Well, I think this is a very extraordinary time for the state of Nevada when it comes to our political clout here in our nation's capital. Never before have we had a member of our delegation in such an important position as Senator Reid enjoys right now. He is the majority leader of the United States Senate, arguably the second or third most important person in this country when it comes to formulating policy. He is, I don't know anybody that works harder on behalf of the people of the state of Nevada.
With him at the lead of the Senate, and then with the partnership between him and Senator Ensign, and the partnership between Congressman Berkeley, Porter, and Heller now, we have a dynamic and phenomenal delegation.
Through careful planning, design, and construction of detention basins, channels, and storm drains, and with help from our representatives in Washington, the district has taken a proactive approach to control flooding in southern Nevada. When we come back, a behind-the-scenes look at the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. They work with our Nevada delegation and the district to construct flood control projects to protect you and your family from flooding. Stay right there.
I'm Congresswoman Shelley Berkeley, and you're watching the Flood Channel.
Hi, my name is Jim Saavedra. I'm from Las Vegas, Nevada, and I'd like to know more how federal dollars are used for flood control.
Money spent for flood control by the federal government it's a nationwide program. It's been determined that the federal government has responsibilities, especially when it deals with federal land, that the projects for flood control are controlled by the Corps of Engineers. Corps of Engineers is the oldest organization within the United States Army. Their responsibility regarding flood control is to design it and to make sure that it's something that's cost effective.
Welcome back to the Flood Channel. Through the years, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers has been an important partner with the district on projects like the Tropicana and Flamingo washes that includes 8 flood basins and 27 miles of channel. Carrie Ann goes behind the scenes to give us a brief history of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers.
For the past 2 centuries, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers has worked to improve navigation and flood control. I'm here at the R4 Detention Basin, just one of the projects the Corps has built in southern Nevada. This basin is part of a network of flood control facilities that protect the southwest part of the valley. The $336 million Tropicana and Flamingo Washes project is a partnership between the district, Clark County, the private sector, and the Corps. The history of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers can be traced back to 1775. While the Corps' beginnings focused on military construction and defense, in the 19th century the organization branched out to oversee the mapping of major waterways and the American West. After the Civil War, the Corps became involved with flood control. The Corps' first official disaster relief mission was when the Mississippi flooded in 1882. Since then, the Corps has played a major role in disaster reconstruction, flood prevention, and the protection of our water resources.
In 1928, the Congress decided that the federal government had a role in flood protection for its citizens, and it charged the Corps of Engineers with flood control responsibilities. So since 1928, we have been involved extensively in doing that as well.
The project with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers has been a 20-year partnership between us, Clark County, and the federal government. Between doing the studies initially to demonstrate that there should be a federal involvement in southern Nevada to the ultimate construction of those projects. Obviously, doing plans and studies like that doesn't protect life and property. It's actually building those projects that protects life and property. And 20 years later, we're seeing the completion of this $336 million project.
Tropicana Flamingo is a public works project that's going to make a tremendous difference to the area of Las Vegas and that region, and it has a lot of national interest. Certainly it is a flagship project, primarily for the reason that it protects Las Vegas Valley, which is an economic engine for that area. This project is one where it was very, very challenging. The area there is very difficult from a water standpoint and in a lot of aspects. Obviously, Las Vegas is has not just experienced growth, it's experienced just exponential growth. And that growth was threatened by the potential for flood. That area is not an easy area to deal with because the water flows off the mountains over soft soils, finding its own channel, and the growth and the development was already there. So we couldn't move a Caesar's Palace or anything like that. So we had to find ways to make those channels a little larger, to put in new bridges where that was required, and instead of a large, say, detention pond, found lots of smaller areas to do detention ponds up above Las Vegas.
Well, the challenge that poses for us seeking federal funding is to convince the people in Washington, D.C. that we are worthy of a project with federal involvement to bring that federal dollars down to Southern Nevada to help us implement our plan quicker than what we could have done otherwise.
I'm always a believer in local government needs to be driving the train, and they need to point out to us what needs to happen. And thanks to the Flood Control District, in their coordinated effort, in cooperation with federal agencies, they've approached us for assistance. So really the credit goes to the Flood Control District. We try our best to help fix and find solutions to problems. But without the Flood Control District carrying the banner and carrying the charge and the board of directors, we wouldn't be doing this. So the credit goes to the board for its direction to us trying to help find solutions to the problems.
Having such a strong relationship with both members of the Senate and the 3 members of Congress that we have locked together, Senator Reed can ensure us so much ability to get legislation through, to get appropriations through, to fund the important projects that we have. And he's been a valuable asset to all Nevada because of his role as majority leader.
The money that I got for the Tropicana Wash, with rare exception, were earmarks. Hear all the bad things about earmarks? It's earmarks. Those floods that came to Las Vegas killed people, lots of property damage. I think that this is a perfect example of what the federal government should be involved in. And there's this people saying we shouldn't have earmarks. Had we not had earmarks, likely we wouldn't have had the flood control project. And if we had, it would have taken many, many years to do it. I was able, with my position on the Appropriations Committee, to direct money to that flood control project, which has been so important for the ability of Las Vegas to grow in an orderly fashion without these floods that come around as they do in deserts.
The Trop Flamingo Wash project, which was one of the largest federal control projects ever, was very important that we got that accomplished, we got that finished. 20 years in the making and $200 million of federal money applied to the project. The only way we could have done that was with the entire delegation working together. And for a small delegation, I think it's a very proud accomplishment.
Getting dollars both locally, state level, and federal level has become so competitive. And it's incumbent upon our member agencies at the district to avoid redundancy, to avoid overlap, and to streamline our project so when we do approach the delegation that they know that this is a priority project, that we have worked to increase the efficiencies of those federal dollars, to see how far we can spread them out over Southern Nevada. And that relationship, not only locally with the member agencies, has to involve the state, the federal delegation, the Corps of Engineers, which has been a critical player here in flood control in Southern Nevada. So that team approach has been perhaps the key ingredient of the success we've enjoyed.
It shows how important the partnership between the federal and local governments can be. This is a partnership that not only returned federal dollars back to the state of Nevada, but it came back for a very beneficial reason. And we save lives by being able to create these flood channels, divert and control the flooding in the Southern Nevada area. And this was a win-win proposition for all of us.
Corps of Engineers, I think, have done a wonderful job and moving forward on this, the planning and design work of this. I'm happy to hear you say it's done, because with the growth of Las Vegas, we're never done. We'll have to go look at other places.
The Corps of Engineers works with FEMA responding to natural disasters like floods, earthquakes, and hurricanes. The Corps also supports EPA's mission to protect our water resources and the environment. The district works with all of these agencies to be proactive in meeting the challenges facing our desert home. Betty?
Thanks, Carrie Ann. Coming up after the break, we'll visit with FEMA and take a look back at the July '99 storm that was declared a federal disaster in southern Nevada.
Hello, I'm Senator Harry Reid, and you're watching the Flood Channel.
Hi, I'm Patty Saavedra from Las Vegas, and I want to know, why is it important to know about flood insurance?
I think it's very important to know about flood insurance because you need to make a personal decision about whether or not it is in your best interest to acquire flood insurance. Now, it costs a little bit more. It's in addition to your homeowner's insurance, but the reality is we never know, since floods are so imprecise, we never know when they're going to hit or where they're going to hit in the Las Vegas Valley. If you take the risk, you might incur a tremendous loss and then find out that your homeowner's insurance does not cover your flood damage. So I would recommend that you contact your insurance agent, find out how much it costs, whether it makes sense for you and your family to not take that risk, but to add a few extra dollars a month to your homeowner's insurance by acquiring flood insurance. And this way you are protected against any possibility that a flood is going to damage your property.
Welcome back to the Flood Channel. FEMA, the Federal Emergency Management Agency, is a group charged with helping people before and after a disaster. They're one of the first groups to help people put their lives back together.
FEMA's mission is to reduce the loss of life and the loss of property for events that could be either man-made disasters or natural disasters. Man-made disasters are obviously the terrorist threats. The natural disasters are hurricanes, earthquakes, flooding, things of that sort, whereby we do respond and we do go out to try to protect the public, property, and lives. And we do this by way of an emergency system that involves a number of components: protection, prevention, response, recovery, and mitigation. It's a risk-based type of a emergency system that we do put in place, and we respond to all kinds of disasters that way. And it's a very important component of FEMA.
We have a very good partnership with FEMA. Mapping the flood zones, we have digital flood insurance rate maps that people can get on our website and see if they're in a flood zone. We are the first ones in the nation to have that through our partnerships with FEMA back here in Washington, D.C. And we work with them in removing areas from flood zones.
Let me just share with you some of your statistics in Nevada. For instance, in Clark County, there are only 6,680 policies. And so what that suggests to me is that when you look at the number of people who do have flood insurance compared to what your total population is out there, there's some work to be done out there. When you compare having an insurance product versus reliance on a federal disaster assistance, well, an insurance product is going to respond whenever the peril occurs. So whenever it floods, you're going to get paid. If you're relying on federal disaster assistance, then it's only if it's a major disaster, whether it's a presidential declaration, that you might qualify for disaster assistance. Okay. So yes, they can get disaster assistance, but it's minimal. The max that's available to them is $28,200, but that's not what everybody gets. Most people get a lot lower than that. So if you're sitting there with a $500,000 house and you're saying, I don't need flood insurance because the government's going to come in and take care of me, let's say you do get the full $28,000. That's not going to do much for you versus $250,000 insurance policy. After a major disaster, you hear these gazillions of dollars are going into these communities. Well, most of that's infrastructure. That's not for individual homes. That's for roads and churches and highways and schools and all that. That's not for the individual home. And so people hear that and they think, oh, I don't need this. I mean, they're going to come in here and they're going to roll the trailers and they're going to roll the dollars out and they're going to put me back in place. No, they won't. They won't. And it's a sad situation when people get into a situation like that and then they realize how little they're going to get, if anything.
We've developed so much data on flood control that's been a help to FEMA because FEMA regulates disaster and flooding can be a disaster. So we work hand in hand with them and we need to, but we're changing the map so fast that we're showing them how to change the maps, the firm maps, which designate flood areas. And so it has to be a very congenial but very strong partnership. Otherwise, we would not be able to get the flood zones removed. We would not be able to build in areas that we know are protected now and safe because we put these massive projects in.
You have to change people's behavior. And in order to change people's behavior, it involves education. Well, how do you educate folks? You just blitz them with stuff all the time. You want to get information in front of them all the time. That's what FloodSmart does. And programs like yours will help, because now you're talking about a specific issue. Flood insurance, why it's necessary, here's how you purchase it, here's what it'll do for you, here are the alternatives. You don't want the alternative. And I think that's the message that has to get out.
As the district builds flood control improvements, in many cases, high-risk flood zones are removed by FEMA. This saves residents thousands of dollars a year. We'll be back with more on the Flood Channel on location from Washington, D.C. right after this.
Hi, this is Congressman John Porter, and you're watching the Flood Channel.
Hi, I'm Ernie from Henderson, and I was wondering, how hard is it to get federal dollars for flood control?
State of Nevada is a small state as far as politically speaking, and we're competing against a lot of other states for flood money, for all kinds of federal money. And so we have to work together, and that's why Senator Reid and I joined together to make sure that we get our fair share of dollars, especially in a valley like the Las Vegas Valley that is subject to flash floods and that can do a lot of damage. So we have to work together to make sure that we get our fair share of federal funding.
The importance of water quality for you and your family is a high priority for the district and its partners. So what role does a national organization like EPA play in helping keep your water safe? Carrie Ann gives us an inside look.
You've seen stories on TV about the importance of properly disposing chemicals. Well, it's also important to keep storm drains and channels free of debris. Water flowing through drainage channels is untreated when it reaches Lake Mead. That's why the EPA says a small change at home can mean a big change in our environment.
What you're seeing in the country over the last several decades has been a growing awareness, not just among citizens, but among federal agencies, to work together to embrace this principle of a watershed approach to water resources management. Well, the United States is truly a global leader when it comes to environmental protection, and recognizing that a strong economy and a healthy environment are linked together. It's important to serve the public interest, and sometimes that means